You're listening to the Startups Without Borders podcast, episode 31. Today, we speak to Tahmina Watson, an immigration lawyer who was not planning to become an immigration lawyer, but life would have it another way. 10 years after arriving to the US, she became part of Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign and wrote her first book, The Startup Visa. When the Muslim ban was signed, she became a warrior for change, advocating for the Startup Visa bill. And as she prepared for the 2020 election, she wrote Legal Heroes in the Trump Era, a book of inspiring ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Listen to this interview with one of the most passionate lawyers you will ever meet and get to learn what it takes to get a startup visa. Tahmina, welcome to the Startups Without Borders podcast. I'm so excited to speak to you today.
I'm so excited too, Valentina. This is such an honor for me. And I just feel like you're a sister from another mother, a kindred spirit. And I'm grateful for the day that I met you.
Thank you so much. Likewise, it's both ways. So I'm very grateful to be able to share the story, your story with you, which is sometimes it feels like it's like a movie, right? There's so much suspense in it. I mean, you were not expecting to become an immigration lawyer. Let's start there. And then you saw yourself involved in Hillary Clinton's campaign behind the scenes. And then when Trump won, you stepped up to build something entirely new, published 3 books already, and you're building great impact in another field, right? We usually, in our show, we speak to entrepreneurs who are building businesses. What you're doing, you're working on the startup visa so that more entrepreneurs can start businesses in the US. That's fascinating. Now, I want to start from the beginning, right? How did you enter the field? You weren't planning to become an immigration attorney. How did you end up there?
That's such a great question. And maybe someday there will be a movie. Who knows? I was born and raised in London. If people tune into my accent, they'll know I'm not from America, but I am very much American. I was born and raised in London to an immigrant family. My parents were from Bangladesh, and they moved to the United Kingdom in the 60s and 70s. My dad became a barrister in the UK, and when I grew up, all I wanted to do was be a barrister too. I remember walking around with my dad, going to courts with a bag full of books and just watching what he did. And in those days, it was okay to take your child to school. It was almost like take your child to work day. And I just remember many days where I just was in the car, going from car to court to, hallway, sitting there because I couldn't always be there. But anyway, I aspired to be a lawyer like him. It wasn't an easy journey, lots of, ups and downs in life. But eventually I did become a barrister in the UK. In between, I lived in Bangladesh for 10 years. So 0 to 8 in London, 8 to 18 in Bangladesh, 18 to 30 in London. And then I moved to the United States. When I became a barrister in the UK, by the way, in the United States, Valentina, nobody knew what a barrister is. And then when George Clooney married one, I'm like, thank goodness he has now paved the way for me to call myself a barrister again.
Right.
Because I would get questions like, coffee, that doesn't make sense. I'm like, no, I don't make coffee. I'm not a barista. I am a lawyer. And so in the UK, I was practicing mainly civil law and criminal law. But I met my husband. I had my own sleepless in Seattle moment when I was visiting the United States on a holiday. And then I had a long distance relationship with him and eventually got married and moved here. But I was a lawyer. All I wanted to do in my life is be a lawyer. And it was very difficult figuring out how to become a lawyer in the US again, because every state has its own bar and the system is different from the United Kingdom.
Right.
What I did know, having just gone through the immigration process as well to get my green card and eventually citizenship, that I didn't want to do immigration. To me, it felt like it was going to be asylum law day in, day out. I just didn't know how expansive it really is or could be. But I had several jobs come my way that were immigration. I said, no, thank you. No, thank you. I always had a passion for human rights. I just wanted to do something more than just human rights. But when the fifth job came along on immigration, I thought, I'll just do this for 5 years. But day one of immigration, I was just so thankful to the universe because it was everything I wanted to do. It's intellectually stimulating. It is procedurally complicated. So I'm always on, thinking on my feet and, researching what I need to do. I'm making an impact on people's lives very directly. I say I'm helping people either in their livelihoods or helping their loved ones reunite. And those are the two most important things in people's lives.
Right.
And then I really found that I'm good at it. I'm dealing with the people who are, facing basic human rights violations to people who are the entrepreneurs. And now fast forward the clock a little bit. I started in 2006 here. 2009, I started my practice. And I didn't really understand the word policy to its full depth. But what was happening in practice is that in the 2009 recession, a lot of people in the United States were being laid off from their jobs. I live in Washington State. A lot of your listeners might know about Microsoft and Amazon and Boeing and all these big names. They're headquartered here. But during the recession, a lot of people were being laid off from these very companies. And they were coming to me saying, all I want to do is have my own startup. And having just started my own business, I was learning about entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship is not just about tech startups. It's about every business. And I was learning the challenges of running a business, but also really understanding that they wanted to have the American dream. I didn't know I had an American dream. I had a lot of dreams. They came true in America, but all the people that were coming to me had that dream. And that sent me down a rabbit hole of policy research. And that started me on the path of startup visa research. And what was serendipitous was in 2009, as this recession was happening, as people were saying, I want my own startup, the first bill for a startup visa was released. It didn't say startup visa, but it had provisions in it. And that had me holding on to something. And during that time, there were not a lot of lawyers talking about this issue. But I recognized immediately, if we could change the policy and harness the talent of people around the world innovating, we could really do something good. And so that led me into this journey that eventually led me into being on the immigration committee for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. And then absolutely, you're right. When there was this heartbreak of the election, it was very much, what am I going to do to protect the community? At the time, I had a live radio show. I was also writing a lot about immigration, not just about startup visa, a lot about startup visa, but other things too. Immigration in the United States was from the 1950s and 60s. That's when the law was set. But Valentina, the world has changed so many times over. The laws need to stay up to date with what's happening in the world, with the reality. But we are doing it backwards. So I write about everything. I'm just passionate about immigration in general, but specifically about entrepreneurs. And so when the Trump administration came along, what I realized is that everybody in every position of power, local authorities, state authorities, federal government, everybody's going to need to know about immigration law, because that was one of the key issues. So I set in motion to have a committee. I managed to get people on the committee, and you may know this, and your listeners will probably laugh at it. You say committee, and everybody runs away from you. I managed to persuade them. So I walked away from this Christmas dinner with 30 names. But what was interesting is, while I knew we were going to have to do a lot of work, I didn't know what that work was going to be until the travel ban happened. Yeah. And that set in motion the next 4 years of all the work that I would be doing. And it's really about organizing, honestly, when there is a crisis, no matter what the crisis is. You want to hear somebody say, things are going to be okay. But in that moment, we were all paralyzed. Nobody knew what was going to happen, what to do to prepare. And it's not like I knew what to do to prepare, but what I did know is we need to be in position. And so I really got in position, which helped me then address issues and come up with organizing methods. And I had a lot of, on the spot training for myself. Like I had to learn as I go. How do I deal with intakes of hundreds of people just coming within minutes of, this travel ban? And I'm very proud of all the things we've done, but I do want people to know it's not just me. What is really important is you've got to find ways for people to help. People want to help, but they don't know how. And you need that person who can say, here's something you can do. Here's something you can do. And I became good at harnessing the desires and bringing together the needs with that desire to help and the people who needed help.
That's incredible. I mean, I hear you and I can see you're an entrepreneur at heart. I mean, taking action with whatever resources you have and, acquiring that courage to move forward and start a comedy or in a moment where, beyond politics, we're not here to take sides, but there was an actual concrete policy, the travel ban that was affecting millions of families and millions of lives, right? And you took action. How did you get that courage, right? To start a committee and to start, building the basis or the foundations of what today is the Startup Visa program?
Thank you for asking that question. I often ask myself that. And I think the key thing that was driving me was fear. Fear for myself. I'm from various, I have various minority categories attached to me, but I deal with minority communities. But one of the things that people don't understand is minority communities are tied to Native Americans, so to speak, Americans who are born here. And when you think about fear, not only about myself, but the people I'm helping, that you can have fear paralyze you, or you could have fear fuel you. And I made sure that all that energy that I had was actually directed in a positive way. Because in my opinion, negativity can just bring you down. And you can look at a glass half full and you can look at a glass half empty. It's the same glass, same amount of water. And so I realized that if nobody else is saying it's going to be okay, I'm going to be that person. And so that was what drove me. And during the last 4 years, I didn't really have an awful lot of time to talk about the startup visa because a lot of my entrepreneur clients who are here on different types of visas. And I would very much encourage people to read my books. The first one is called the Startup Visa. It will lay the groundwork of why a visa like that is necessary in the US. What is really interesting is in 2009, when the United States was just talking about the startup visa and we had our first bill, around the world, only Chile had that visa. No one else had it. But in 2022, you know better than me how many countries have adopted the startup visa program in one way or another. That recognition stemmed here, yet we have not changed the law. Canada took our first bill. They took it verbatim. They molded it into their own program. And look at Canada today. People from all around the world are flocking to Canada, and think about where Canada will be in the next 5 years and 10 years because of entrepreneurship. America was actually, the foundation of America is entrepreneurship. Again, people should read my book and read the introduction about the history of America. How did it become a superpower? People who are being persecuted from different parts of the world came here and they created Levi's jeans. They created Bose headphones. I don't know which one you're wearing. They there was so much innovation that happened here, but it happened here because entrepreneurship is encouraged. The founding fathers wanted the American dream to be true. And so the last 4 years, I wasn't able to talk about that so much because I was in fight or flight mode. Because a lot of my entrepreneur clients just were getting their visas denied. And people who'd been here for 10, 15, 20 years had to leave the country. And so fast forward to today, I think we have a lot of opportunity to bring our laws back to where they should be, policies where they should be, not just where they should be, where they need to be for the future. And so I feel very passionate, but I do need to add my clients also inspire me. When I have a client say to me, Tahmina, this is my dream, it does something within me where I'm like, oh my gosh, I've got to make their dream come true. When I see my clients really working hard to create something new, but immigration is the only obstacle, it makes me want to help them even more, to get that face on the front cover of a newspaper. And it's happened to many of my clients. I'm sort of the wind beneath their wings. And I love that position because when my clients are successful, it's almost like the bird, the baby has flown the nest, if you like. And I cherish that privilege. It's an honor and a privilege.
Wow, talk about passion. Talk about passion for your profession and for an impact in the world. Tahmina, our community of entrepreneurs, many of them are migrants, are refugees, and they want to know, is there a startup visa program today in the US? Can anyone get it from anywhere in the world? What can you tell us about it?
Well, that's a really great question. And the answer is, it depends. We categorically do not have a startup visa yet. Again, read my book. I would love for you to understand all the nuances, but we have a lot of visas that we can possibly use. Again, read the book. Each of the visas have limitations for startup founders, but that's the framework we have to work with. And so that's what I have to work with. But when President Obama was in office, he was a huge champion for entrepreneurship. He had launched the Entrepreneur Summit, a global entrepreneur summit around the world, and your listeners might know about some of those. But he had put in motion and created a program called the International Entrepreneur Parole. Now, do not get scared with the word parole. It's a word that often people will sort of like, raise their eyebrows. In the immigration world in the United States, parole means permission to be in the US. And so President Obama used the regulation and the law about parole, permission to be in the US, under the prong that says significant benefit to the United States. So under that rule, they were able to create a program for international entrepreneurs. If international entrepreneurs have received at least $250,000 of investment from American investors, and there are other things to mention, read the book and go to my blog. And if you have at least 10% equity in the business and you are a key member of this team, at least 3 co-founders can come to the US under this program, initially for 2.5 years, and then extend it for another 2.5 years. The Biden administration has revived this program. It went through a lot of history in its short life, but it is now available to use. So anyone, anywhere in the world can use it. There is a big but. This program is not yet perfect. And I have been working with some top lawyers and policy analysts and venture capitalists in this country, where we have come together as a coalition. And we are calling ourselves the Coalition of International Entrepreneurship. And we just released some recommendations yesterday to the Department of Homeland Security to make this program better. One of the shortcomings at the moment is that there is a delay in how these applications are processed. And you may know this better than anybody, Valentina, that when you have investors invest in you, they need to see things happen now. And if that hasn't happened now, everybody's losing money, the product loses its vision. So those recommendations have been made. And hopefully, by the time this interview airs, there might be some more news. And hopefully, if there is more news, I will make sure you have it so you can put it in the links. But as of now, the recommendations have been made. Anybody, and I will say to people, do not let the shortcomings deter you from applying. You can apply, because if you are not in the game, you're not in the game. If you are in the pipeline, when these rules get adjusted, you will be at the top of that line. So I would recommend that if you have qualified investors from America investing in your company and your company has a branch in the US, you can do this. Do not wait, because this is the time. And I'm so grateful, Valentina, that you have invited me now and all the things that you are doing, because the pandemic has accelerated the visibility of what startups can do in this world. Your listeners know better than anybody that you can be in a small place in Egypt and make a big impact. You can be in Timbuktu, wherever that might be, and create a startup. You don't necessarily need to be in America anymore. However, America still is the place that people want to be because the resources are here. If you have made it big here, then you can expand anywhere. WhatsApp is your prime example. Two European founders created this app that Facebook bought. That was one of the primary communication vehicles during this pandemic, during the protests that we saw, in America and around the world. And so you can be anywhere in the world making that impact, but America still offers a lot to entrepreneurs. And so what I would say is apply now if this is where you want to be. Do not wait.
Right. That's a great tip of advice. And I was just going to ask you about, some of the details that we should know as entrepreneurs before applying to the program or while applying to the program. Because it's exactly as you said, right? The resources are there. There's a lot of opportunity. There is a lot of investment happening, and lots of founders want to be in the US for different reasons. So if we had to say 5 key things that they should know, where to apply, for example, what to include, what to highlight, what would be those 5 things everyone should know about the program?
So for the program, number 1, you should know that if an American investor invests in you, at least $250,000, and it can also be angel investors. The key is they have to be American. Either green card holders or citizens. It could be a combination of 40,000, 50,000 combination, make it 250,000. That's what you need to know, number 1. If you are already in the US as a student, and you may have a lot of listeners who are, if they have received $100,000, that's the second thing. If you have $100,000 in research and development grants from state or local authorities, you can also qualify for this. At least 3 co-founders can actually apply for this. You must have a presence in the US, and this company must give you a salary. It's very important you have a salary. I think those are the 5 things people need to know. But the main thing I will say is get the book, because there's an entire chapter dedicated to this particular program and some of the things you need to know. But I do want to add another 5 things, if that's okay, Valentina.
Of course. Go ahead.
Oh my gosh. So I think what I have learned as a lawyer, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who's been in leadership positions in different ways, if somebody said to me, what are the 5 things that an entrepreneur or anybody needs to know, is that self-care is number 1. When you are an entrepreneur, you are very focused on getting your product out there, getting your business out there. You forget to eat, you forget to sleep. You don't think you have time to eat or sleep. But those 2 things are so vital to you as an individual. that everything else stems from you. So self-care, your well-being is my number one to anybody who talks to me about what should I do. And I've learned that only in the pandemic. I've been practicing law for almost 20 years. I never really thought of that as a primary issue. But I see that with my clients. I saw that with myself. It doesn't bring out the best in you if you are not looking after yourself. So that's number one. Number two, I find with my entrepreneur clients that they often are doing something so new, so out of the thinking box that people can't see it. And therefore, often you are going against the grain. What I say to them is accept yourself as a visionary. Because if you can be confident in your vision, you can make sure your vision is understood by others. Once it is out there, everybody will follow. But it's very difficult to do something new sometimes. So stay the course and accept yourself as a visionary. The other thing I will say is be determined. Do not have any stones unturned. If you are not determined in your craft, in your work, you will not be able to move forward. So determination, you should have a village. And I have this in my own life. Everything that I'm sharing is because I have lived through it. I have a village for having my children. I've got 2 kids, 11, actually 12 as of last week, and 9, and an incredibly supportive husband. You need a village for everything you do. Writing a book is not easy. You need a village for that. You need a village for your business. Make sure you have that. And then lastly, don't give up. You need to make sure you stay the course. And failure in one way or another is educational and it's a lesson. Just because your product may not have launched, you pivot. But everything that you have done is going to train you for the next thing. What is really important that people forget is people from the outside, people see that success. People are not seeing all the failures. So do not let that make you give up. So I really believe in these 5 things. And I wanted to share that with you because any lawyer, any young entrepreneur, any of my clients, I now share these very 5 things that I've shared with you.
Thank you so much, Tahmina. I'm out of words. Talking about not giving up, right? You're the one person who can teach us how not to give up, even when you seem to swim against the current, right? And the current is quite a heavy one. Now, let's talk for a minute to investors, because we've just launched a Startups Without Borders Angels, which is a community of angel investors as well. And, there's a lot of investors in our community. And I would love to share your advice from your perspective, from a legal standpoint. We're seeing American VCs, American investors that are creating funds around the world, especially it's been happening since the pandemic, right? Now, how do you suggest that they can use these funds to get entrepreneurs to come to the US, given that in the US, they're more likely to secure certain deals, to secure certain additional funds? So how can they support these entrepreneurs to move to Silicon Valley?
I love that question. And what I will pitch to you right now is that when you have this group of people together, I'd love to come and speak to them directly. Because one of the things that I had always wanted to do is educate the investors. What we have seen in the pandemic, and it's astounding that American investors are going around the globe creating their funds. And I think that is so smart. I think that is so innovative in and of itself. Yeah. But there will be some investors who want to see those entrepreneurs in the US. And this International Entrepreneur Parole Program hinges on the investor. In America, any immigration visa either has to have a sponsor who's an employer, a sponsor who's a family member. In the entrepreneur program that we have, which is essentially a startup visa, it hangs its hat on the qualified investor. Who is a qualified investor? It is either an angel who is a green card holder or an American citizen, or a VC firm that is majority held by green card holders or US citizens. Not only do they need to be Americans, they also need to have invested in other portfolio companies at least $500,000. I think it's 500, and I'll make sure you have it for your notes. And they must have created jobs for 2 other companies in the past. So what the government is doing is they're saying, well, I don't know this entrepreneur from Adam, but I want to know that you, the investor, know what you're doing. You're putting your money where your mouth is. So we need to know that you are credible. And so these investors can have their own strategies on how to bring those investees to the US. And I would love to help them craft how they do that. So that's the biggest thing they need to know. But what they need to know is there is now a path that did not exist before. And that path only came along in May 2021. But it hasn't been used enough because a lot of people are afraid to use something new. They haven't seen where it's going to go. And I mentioned the problems. But if people do not file for these applications, we cannot point out the problems to be able to fix them. So as much as lawyers and a community of professionals are coming together to do this, we need more. We need the force of the investors behind us. So if you are an investor listening to this, please let me help you, because your success is the success of the program. Your success is the success of your company. And your success is the success for the people that you're serving, which is really everyone in the world.
Right. I love that. And we would be more than happy to have you in one of our webinars for angel investors and in VCs as well. More than welcome to participate. We're going to be organizing that for sure after the episode. Now, my last question just before we go is, what are you looking forward to in the future? I mean, we see that despite, in the US, migrants have had an immense impact in the economy, in the innovation scene, but yet they're not recognized. The potential of migration is not recognized publicly. What are you looking forward to? What would you expect to see as next developments?
Well, I'm very hopeful that we will start to see policy developments, both administratively, but also I sincerely hope Congress will do something here. But what I'm looking forward to, and just on that note, the administration actually in the last 2 weeks have made some updates on their policies for entrepreneurs in how to get green cards. And I hope to see more things coming along. But what I'm looking forward to for myself is being part of this change, because I think what I've realized is these dialogues and the work I've done can continue. I can build on that, and I can really have influence on the policies and the laws. And so I want to be able to educate people, inform them, and make sure I help people to the best of my ability. When I die, I want people to know that I made a difference to the humankind using the law and bringing human interests together to make the world a better place.
Wow. Thank you so much, Tahmina. It has been not only informative, I mean, we've learned a lot about the starter visa in the US, or the parole program as they call it, but we've also gotten a lot of motivation from your words, from your own experience, which was an entrepreneurial journey, the entrepreneurial journey of a lawyer. So thank you for that, Tahmina. We're so grateful to have you.
Thank you so much for having me. I am grateful to be here.
Thank you. Have a lovely day.